What's up, everyone? My name is Cody DeArkland. I look after developer experience at Sentry. We just got back from GitHub Universe, and we did some cool stuff there around like the stories of like Sentry and GitHub together, and the different things that you can do inside of Sentry when you have GitHub set up and when you're using Copilot. And so we wanted to put on just like a quick thing to go through and show a little bit of like what that looks like and what getting started in that way is. We usually try to do these as like a little bit more like hands-on so that you can like jump in and follow along and work on it too. This one's a little bit more tour-y, but a lot of it should be pretty easy for you to replicate. Like the GitHub story is so tight with us, and there's so many cool things there that like it really becomes like a foundational part of getting Sentry right. Because there's a lot of things you get out of having like the GitHub integration set up inside of Sentry and using GitHub's tools alongside it. So I'm gonna fire up sharing here in a second, and we will spend most of our time in product exploring different parts and different features inside of it. So let me go ahead and fire up sharing. We're going to go ahead and do the ever so scary sharing of the whole screen. We're just going to hope that nothing goes tragically wrong as a result of that. So the session we did at GitHub Universe was really around this idea of like the just ship it workflow, and like it's really tragic that I'm doing a slideshow presentation right now on a live stream, but I think there's a little bit of like good framing here before we jump into the actual product. I think we're coming into this time where people are really kind of prioritizing the idea of like just shipping software. I think like everyone's always really cared about that, but I think you can gain so much momentum now, just with like the AI tooling the way it is. Like the more you can lean in on like building and shipping, the better off you are. But there's definitely things that like can be done to make that a lot smoother of a process, because otherwise things just go chaotic and you're just shoving a lot of code out into the ether and hoping it all works. I think you want to be able to make sure that as you ship things that you're catching bugs before they actually make it to users. Like we want to build stuff and we want to try things, and if something is going to go wrong, we want to know about it before it gets there. And when issues do happen, we want to be able to figure out like what happened with that very, very quickly. We don't want to have to stitch together a bunch of different systems to figure that stuff out. And then when we do figure out actually what happened and why, we want to be able to actually get it fixed and working quickly. And that's kind of what we focused on in that session, was like, how do we like connect these parts of the story together? I think there's another side of this is like, how do we create scale for individuals, right? Like as a developer, like when I find tools that make me be able to do a lot more as just an individual, I tend to gravitate towards those because I want things that let me kind of parallelize multiple parts of my work. And I think we've done some really cool stuff there. And so I'm going to fire up, we'll jump into actual Sentry now, and we'll spend the rest of this time in actual products and actually like code things. So no more slideware. So this is Sentry. If you've never seen it before, you're brand new to Sentry, which I hope you are not. But if you are, this is where you land when you come into Sentry. This is the error feed, and these are all errors that I'm catching against my project. So I have this fun little vibe Cody project. If I go into Sentry vibe.app, we can see it live. And really what it lets you do is go out and just build things, right? And so I can come in and say like a really cool landing page about Sentry and GitHub together, use information from Sentry docs. And this will go out and it'll start building out an application based on that, right? It's probably going to do it in like React or Vite or something like that. But it's going to go build that out and do its whole thing. And this is an application that's being monitored by Sentry. And so like there's a lot of parts to this. There's multiple tiers to this application. It runs in what we would call a mono repo, meaning it's got, we'll jump into that code real quick here. It's got the front end, the broker tier, and then the back end all running in the same repo, and they're running as separate services. I'm running this one on Railway, but obviously you could be running these things kind of wherever you wanted to. So this is going out and it's building right now, and this is kind of a backdrop. It's not something we need to spend a lot of attention on, because ultimately it's going to go out and do its thing either way. But as I mentioned, there's 3 tiers to that service. There's the front end, there's a broker that handles communication between both, and then there's this runner that is what actually goes out and provisions the workloads onto a thing. This is running on a little server that I have right now, and so when you go provision on the app front end, it goes and deploys that onto your back end. There's different concerns for each layer of this, and there's different enhancements and builds we want to do and things we want to change inside of that. And what you're seeing here, because I've set my view this way, you're seeing all the issues for those 3 different projects. And projects are how we separate out different kind of logical environments inside of Sentry. And so all of these are issues that have come up as I've been using it. Some of them are a little bit more popular. I can see the event volume over here and the user impact over here. This is just my little app, so there's not a ton of people. I can change the filtering around, obviously, and get like really specific into things that are kind of happening right now, if I want to. Now I'm pushing a lot of changes to this. Full disclosure, it's very much a vibe coded application, so like I'm in there kind of building things out pretty often. And so when I talked about that whole like just ship it concept, we want things that are going to help us catch when things are going wrong. And so Sentry has a code review product that we are in open beta with right now. You can see some of the information about it down here. It's gonna move around pretty soon, and this won't be inside of the UI the same way anymore. But Sentry's AI code review looks at your existing issues inside of your environment and uses those to help figure out if the changes that you're pushing in are going to create issues. So when I talk about like the just ship it workflow and being able to scale really well. Oh, but we already have an issue coming right here. This n+1 query. So we might jump into this and play around with fixing that. More on that in a minute. When I talk about creating more scale, I don't want to have to jump in and review every single change that is getting pushed into my environment. I want tools that'll help do that for me and flag the ones that need additional inspection or need attention. And so if I go in and I look at a bunch of the pull requests that I've made inside this project, I can go into closed, and I can see several of these have multiple comments. If I go into this one here, this was a feature I added to basically handle incoming messages a little bit cleaner. We can see Sentry found some stuff inside of this one. So first off, it found that like some of the things that are being fixed inside of here are related to issues inside of my environment. This is happening because largely because of the GitHub integration that I have. I've got my GitHub repo tied in, and I'm going to show you how to set that up. But I can see that an issue was opened inside of Sentry that's related to the code that we're pushing in here. So we start to get this really good, like tight feedback loop between the code you're pushing in and is it actually addressing issues or is it related to issues inside of an environment. Now I also get to see the actual code review component. So in this case, it's calling out that the broker uses a 30-second interval, but it doesn't back off over time. So it's always doing a 30-second back off. We get a nice analysis, suggested fix, and we get a nice little copyable code snippet. So I can grab this and I can go drop that into CoPilot and have it go and build the fix in. Same thing down here, I get another one, right? So these are running on every PR. So when I open this PR, it looks at all the changed files and does a detection on it. So getting this set up, very, very easy. We do have to set up the GitHub integration, and we do have to install a GitHub app. As far as the GitHub integration goes, you can come into settings, hit integrations down here. And I always just go in and search for GitHub on the top. I type that wrong. There we go. I can come in here. GitHub showing up on the top. I should have actually searched in here, not on this window up here. GitHub's right there and available. And obviously, I've added my repos already. I've added it twice. Coming in and adding it, it's pretty straightforward. Just do add installation, and it's gonna ask you to either log in or it's gonna look at ones you have access to, and then you can continue, sign in, and start to configure it out. So like I'm getting asked which organization I want to use. I can point it at mine. And if I do the install again, it's going to add a third one down here. So we don't actually want that. But once this is in, you can come back in, you can start to configure it, and you can start to mess with the individual repos. Like I could start to exclude certain repos if I wanted to. I've chosen to add all my repos, so these are all available now. This is also how you set up code mappings. So if you want to be able to, inside of issues, understand exactly where in the code that's in your repo a stack trace is referencing, you can set that up here also. It makes it very easy to start to correlate problems. So with this setup, if we go back in here, we can take a look and we can see over here we get prompted to go and install the Sentry app as part of the code review setup. So that installs from here, and once you have that configured, you'll be ready to go. You can come into general settings up here, and you'll want to make sure you have the generative AI features turned on, as well as the enable code review. So this is kind of a master switch. If you have this turned off, you won't actually get those review comments. But if you have this turned on, you should get them coming through. And so with those on now, every time I push code into that repo, Sentry and Seer are going to look at that and do a review against that change and find these issues. A lot of times I'll copy this out and I'll drop it into CoPilot and have it just go and fix that issue for me. So you see, I already merged this one. I actually had these resolved out, but I unresolved them to be able to show in here. But this was from a change I actually pushed in already. And so this one is already fixed, but this handles that stage of the workflow where you're building, you're adding code to your application, you're opening PRs, and like you want the system to be watching for those and detecting when things are going to go wrong. And what's really unique about the way Sentry approaches this is instead of just looking at the code and saying, okay, does this semantically look wrong? We're looking at issues that have happened inside of your environment previously. We're looking at issues that have happened around the code that you're changing. And we're paying special attention to that and using that as additional context for discovering new issues. And so it works out to being a lot more like bug detection more than code review ultimately. And so we've set that up. That's running now, and that'll help us catch bugs before they actually are ran by users and before they are running into users. But we saw this one come up previously, this N+1 issue. Now, because I've set up the GitHub integration inside of my environment, now I have access to the code inside of a repo that I can change. We're going to come to that in a minute, but what I want to do first is actually step back from this and talk a little bit about the development experience when you're working inside of the application directly. So I'm going to grab one of these issues. We'll grab this one right here with this role issue. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy the URL. We're going to come back to why I'm copying that in a second. I'm going to drop into CoPilot, and I'm going to open up a new CoPilot chat up here. And we're going to set up the Sentry MCP server. And the reason I'm going to set that up is the MCP server lets us interact with all of the information that Sentry has about your application from within your editor directly. And so we can start passing in these fixes and have it pull down what Seer is finding. Seer is our AI debugging agent. We can have it find all of the things that Seer is finding to fix inside of our application. And then we can use our local editor to actually apply those. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to do add a server. The Sentry MCP is an HTTP server. And if you go to our docs, there's actually a link, or if you go to mcp.sentry.dev, there's a link to just install it in VS Code for you. But I'm going to do it manually here. So we'll go https mcp.sentry.dev/mcp. I'm going to name this one Sentry. And I'm going to make this a global MCP server that's available for everybody. So that's available now. We're going to go in and list it. We'll go in and list out our MCP servers. And we can see it's running in here. Now, I had this running previously. And so ultimately, like it's already signed in. Normally, you would need to authenticate. And so I'm going to see if we can just reset auth, MCP auth, so we can see what that looks like. Let's see. Can we clear? Yeah, unfortunately, it's not going to let us clear it out. List our servers, and we'll try that. List servers. We'll hit the Sentry one. There we go. Sign out. That's what I wanted to do. So cool. We're signed up now. So if you come in for the first time, you're going to see this one stopped. You're going to go in and start it. It's going to prompt you to authenticate. We're going to allow that. We're going to open up the browser. And this is a little bit new. So if you're setting up the Sentry MCP server for the first time in a while, you probably haven't seen this screen yet. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. We're at this time now where people are using so many MCP servers, and we're adding these into our configurations inside of our editors. And the tools that are being added are honestly just throwing a lot of bloat in there. A lot of people don't realize that there's a bunch of metadata that's passed as part of every request you make to an LLM involving the tools from MCP that are available. And so what we've done recently is we've changed around the configuration for the MCP to not publish every single tool that we have available. So by default, we're going to give you things to inspect issues and events, and then tools for interacting with Seer. But we keep these other ones disabled so that we're saving on your available context inside of your LLM interactions. Now, if you're only using the Sentry MCP, you might choose to come in and just turn all of these on so you have every tool available. But we want to make sure that we're only enabling things that like you're actually going to get a lot of use out of. And so by default, we stick with just the inspect issues and events, and then Seer also. I'm going to go and turn all of these on because we're going to use a little bit of them. And I'm going to approve this. And so this passes us through the OAuth flow. And then when we come back into here and look at listing servers, we can see it's actually running, and we are good to go. So now I can come in and I can start querying. I can start querying the MCP server from the agent interface down here. I'm going to change this over to make sure that we're using something a little bit more smarter. We'll go with the haiku. We'll go Sonnet 4.5, not haiku. And I'm going to start asking it just a couple of example questions from Sentry. So can you show me the last 5 issues in my Sentry Vibe project? So Sentry Vibe is one of the projects inside of my environment. This is going to go out and it's going to use that MCP server to start digging into that project specifically. Right now, it's going in and looking at all the organizations that I have access to, and it's looking for that Sentry Vibe project. And so the MCP servers are smart enough to start digging in and trying to figure out how to answer the question you're asking. So it's not in here. This is a test org that I have. And it's going to keep stepping through to the next ones. And we needed to get to build with code. So here we go. It found 3 of these. So I'm going to allow it. Now I want to be totally transparent that doing the last 5 issues is a pretty campy demo, all things considered. It doesn't actually teach much, but it does show being able to connect in and pull down information from the environment. And so what we're actually going to do in a second here is take this and actually see if we can apply a fix for it. And so in this case, we have a couple of ones that we know are kind of trash errors. Like this is obviously just a trash error. This is running locally in a dev environment. This got sent up. This one feels a little bit more realistic. And so do these other ones. This one might be a little bit of a false one just from running locally. But we can see things like the impact is listed out here. We're getting all this detail back from the MCP server. This N+1 query though, this one's a real thing. So if I click this, it'll actually open up that issue in Sentry for us to look at. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this real quick. I'm going to grab the whole URL. I'm going to go back into code. I'm going to say, I want to fix this with Sentry. And I'm just going to paste that URL in. And what it's going to do is it's going to start going out to Sentry and taking apart that issue. It's going to look at, because it's an N+1 issue, it's probably going to look at a lot of the performance. It's going to start digging into how to actually go and fix this. I'm going to tell it to just allow tools from Sentry without review. So now it should just run these on the fly without asking me to approve every single time. So it's pulling in detail now. It's looking in the code base to find information about that specific query. And it's going to literally run through the gamut of how to go and fix this. I started to fix this previously, the promise all. I remember when I did this, because we're trying to create a little bit of a blocking scenario where we have time to actually finish. But it's still happening even though we've done that. And so it's finding additional things that we can do to actually go and fix this. Now, this is where things get interesting because we can go in and we can take this fix and apply it locally and test it. And then we can push this up into our code base as a PR where code review is also going to look at the changes that we've made and try to understand if there's any risk being created as a part of adding that change in. And so you get into this really fast feedback loop where you're able to use our tools to debug problems inside of your applications. You're able to find fixes and push them into your app. But then you're also able to have Seer look at those fixes and make sure the things that you're implementing are actually good and actually going to help your application out. And so in this case, like, we haven't hit an error yet. Like, if we go back to that app, it's probably still actually running behind the scenes. Now it actually finished. So let's see. Let's take a look at what it did. It might or might not start up. I wasn't running this in the background right now. Yeah, it's not going to start up right now. But it actually went and created the application out, which is pretty cool. And I could fire it up, but it's just running on a remote system right now that I just haven't configured the connectivity to yet. But it finished, but I didn't get an error inside of here at all. Sentry caught this as just a warning of something that could cause problems eventually. So like, it's seeing that this is a query that is causing performance issues inside of my application, and it gave us a way to go and try to fix that, which I think is pretty awesome as far as like watching the full feedback loop of something inside of your app. Also, while this is going and fixing, it's actually going to look at the full root cause of this problem. So this is Seer actually running on it. It's found a issue due to inefficient batching, and it's found the root cause for it. I can go ahead and bring this content out and actually use it inside of the fix, and that's exactly what the MCP server is set up to do. The MCP server is set up to take all that context out from Seer. So Seer is our debugging agent that goes and looks at all of the information that we're capturing about your application and uses that to help figure out what to do to fix it. In our case, it's going to grab things like logs. It's going to grab stack traces. It's going to grab distributed tracing. It's going to grab the breadcrumbs, the error message. It's going to grab connected systems, and it's going to look at all of that and say, what can I do to actually fix this problem? Or, well, what actually is causing this problem? What queries in this case are causing it? And how can I fix those? And so you get to use kind of the best of both worlds here, where Sentry is fueling all of this context to go and figure out what's actually broken. And you're getting to use things like VS Code to go and CoPilot ultimately to go and fix that issue. So this one made some changes to the application code. Unfortunately, we won't be able to like really easily test that, but we can come in and look. It looks like it added a little bit of a refresh timer in. We scroll down, we can see it's looking at adding some better refreshes overall throughout. There's the function getting called. And it looks like there's a timer associated with it, right? So like, in just a real quick minute, we were able to grab the URL, paste it in, and tell it to go fix it. It pulled all that context from Sentry and used it to go and actually build up a fix. Now in Seer directly, we actually get to see what the root cause is here. And I can go in and I can tell this to find a solution using Seer, and it's going to give me Seer's version of this directly, right? So Seer can go and code up these problems or these solutions also, and actually give you the code back to go and implement it, which is fine. But a lot of times we have tools that we trust like more necessarily for actually implementing code than we would necessarily a system that's separate. We trust Sentry for all the context about what's going wrong inside of our applications. But if I'm working inside of VS Code already, I'm probably going to want to just use that to go and implement the change. And so this is going to go and find the solution for this, which is what I want from Sentry ultimately. And then I'm going to drop that into my editor to go and implement. So it's kind of two paths to the same thing. You could use the MCP server and have it automatically run through this full sequence, or you can be inside of Sentry and have Seer automatically running. I clicked it manually here, but we have a ton of automation options to have this look at issues as they come into your environment, scan them, figure out what's wrong, and then go and set up a solution. So this wants us to parallelize database queries and build snapshot to eliminate sequential fetching latency. I'm going to tell us to code it up because I want to go and actually look at the code that Seer comes up with. And this is going to take just a few minutes to get through. So when this finishes, I'm going to be able to open this up as a PR directly in GitHub, which is great. Looks like it's almost done. It's got the optimized query there. We can see the thinking process on the bottom. Now, if I saw something I didn't like it doing, I could come in here, give it a message, and send it. And that would actually interrupt the flow or give it additional context. Like I've seen times where maybe the AI was working on a different database, or I had a duplicate table for a certain reason, and I noticed it was working on the wrong one. These are all things you can grab and tell it to change from. So this went through it. It did a little bit of a different fix. It went and actually changed the database query around. I can go in and tell it to draft a PR for this. It's going to automatically go create that inside of inside of GitHub. There we go. And now I can see the change. So we can see Seer by Sentry implemented this. We can see exactly what it was looking to do. If I go into the files changed, I can see those just like I would expect from GitHub. I can see how it wants to change. It wants to change this query around a little bit. And that is that for the Seer side of this. So we had Seer go and actually create a PR for us to fix this N+1 that came up. We can also again fix it locally and use it inside of our application directly to test locally. A few other things that are worth looking at inside of Sentry while we're here. So obviously we went through and showed the Seer side of this. I can see all of the actual stack traces, or not stack traces, distributed tracing for what's happening at this point. So this is an N+1 query. N+1 queries are when you have many queries running around very similar data. So it's kind of like a repeat query over and over again. I can come in and look at the actual trace for this and see what that looks like. And so we can see there for this one call, there's a whole bunch of database calls being made, all as part of that, which ends up, and they're all blocking in this case. So like it's adding a ton of latency to the actual call. You can see from the time the first call hits all the way down, there's probably a couple hundred milliseconds inside of that span overall. I can jump into any of these and I can start to look at performance for them, right? So like if I look at this database entry here, this one was 4.31 milliseconds. This is 9.92. So these are really, really fast calls. Most of these are probably happening locally at that speed. So it's a little bit of like a not great example because it is running locally. And we'd love to see ones that were just a little bit longer to make it feel real. So okay, these are all coming from Sentry, and this is also one of the strengths of Sentry is that instead of just looking at like the errors and the things that are broken, we're able to look at the full path of communication in this case. So like we're making requests on a front end. That front end is passing data down through the broker to pass communication back and forth, and then also down to the actual runner to deploy it. But the runner then is making deployment changes and sending database updates up. And so I can visualize that entire flow inside of Sentry, and I can debug like the individual parts that are slow, because at knee jerk, you might think the AI itself is running really slow as it tries to go and build out the changes. But having Sentry in place, you can go and see things like maybe it's actually a database query that's causing a problem. Maybe it's this N+1 that's slowing things way down. And so it just makes it really easy to jump in and debug. Now I'm going to head back into VS Code here. This went and did that. There's some other really cool things that we can, I'm going to undo and continue just because I don't want to mess with that right now. There's a lot of other things that the MCP server can dig into also. Now the MCP server has a natural language interface to it. And so I can have CoPilot start looking at other stuff. I can come in and say, ask Sentry what the database performance is for my Sentry Vibe project. And it's going to dig in and actually look that up. So it's going in and look up Sentry Vibe. It's finding the orgs that have access to that. If I had done this in the other chat, it would have kept the context, so it would have found it much faster. So it's looking in the wrong one there, but it's trying all the ones that are in my OAuth. Here's the one it found. It found the outputs it wanted to. And now it's starting to dig into the events. And you can actually see the natural language query that it's using right here. Database query performance metrics for the last 24 hours, including duration, operation time, and queries. I can jump in here and actually see what this looks like inside of Sentry. So if I open this up, it's going to come in and start to bring that information in. But I also could come in here and start seeing those queries represented, right? So the slowest query I have is 172 milliseconds, and it inserts into generation tool calls, but has conflict handling. Each one of these breaks down and are pretty close. Like they're all pretty close in speed. I could start iterating on this and ask it which one is most likely. Like what I like to do is ask which one is the highest risk to fix, or which one is the lowest hanging fruit. It's like one of my favorite queries is to say, can you rate these on complexity to fix versus risk to fix? And this is starting to use the LLM to look at your code and help you gauge like the information and the context is coming from Sentry, which ones are going to be the best impact for you to fix on the performance side. So we're getting some cool ratings in here, but it's very easy to start having Sentry dig into this information and actually treat it more like a chat interface for that, and dig into like some of the performance areas. I could even say things like, show me the highest latency API endpoints. And now this will continue to use that same context to dig into it. A lot of this stuff is available inside of Sentry's UI. Like if you haven't gone in and explored inside of Insights yet and used this area, so I'll come in, I'll just look at my Next.js project specifically. I come in here, we can look and see things like API latency for Next.js. We can also we'll see Web Vitals in a second. We can see some of the slower SSR pages that we have. I can dive into the individual routes. So I can see client routes here. I can come into the API and see API routes and which ones are performing. I get some nice metrics over here on the right-hand side, right? So I can see like, what's the P95 for interactions on the runner endpoint. I can see the proxy. The proxy is a very busy one because this is what all the applications run through. So I can see the performance there. I can dive in and really start to get into the detail on how each one of these is performing. Now, all that's available in Sentry UI for you to explore, and you can create dashboards off of it. You can create alerts off of it, but also being able to have the MCP server go and dig this stuff up and use it inside of your application to go and fix some of these problems. Really good thing to do. So it's pulled back a bunch of information. It's going to tell me the highest latency one. It's going to create a nice little table out of this. Now, this one's interesting because this is the provisioning endpoint. And so, yeah, its max duration is 193 seconds, but that's because it's going out and building an application, right? So we know that one's going to be a lot longer. We see ones that have higher latency down here also, right? So like this is a logs endpoint that is going really, really slow. Projects is an important endpoint that we want to dig into. So we can look at this and we could start having it decompose fixes for this also. So again, the MCP server is definitely one of those like mandatory tools to me for interacting with Sentry. If you've got if you're working in like a local editor a bunch, because it just gives you all of that debugging context available right inside your editor to use. Cool. So a couple things we showed inside of this. We're cruising up on the end. This was a little bit of a shorter one this time. A couple things that we showed during the flow is getting the GitHub integration set up. We showed getting the code review up and running by installing the application and what it looks like when that's called inside of your app and how to use it. I showed some examples of how to take those fixes out and implement them. So that's pretty cool. We also showed what it looks like to have Seer go in and dig into issues inside of an environment. We can also add, when you add repos to your different projects inside of Sentry, Seer is able to use the code base from those to be as part of its context. So that's really important. We showed using the MCP server to go in, create automatic fixes for issues that are coming in. Another thing I want to show is setting up the automation for Seer. So if you come into search, go to settings, type in search, and go into Seer automation, you'll be able to see all of your projects. And in here, you can go in and actually set up what the automation behaviors for Seer are. So like in my environment, I want everything scanned. And then for ones that are actionable, I want it to go and create a fix for me. And so if I go in and I look at that Sentry Vibe project and we open it up, we can see the settings for this one. I'm having it scan issues. If things are highly actionable or above, I'm having it automatically trigger the fixes that we showed you in the UI before. and then we tell it where to stop. So I'm having it go all the way through and create a pull request. I've added the repo down here, and we're good to go. So that is a good way to get started. Setting up Seer and using the automation. So we showed that. We showed going in and running the MCP server to fix an issue. We showed using Seer to go in and dig into why something is happening and create the fix for us and open the PR. And then we also showed how to interact with that inside of the editor and how to dig into performance there. So yeah, I'm gonna take a look at chat real quick, and we'll see if there's any major questions that have come through. Don't see any yet. Here's the chat. There's some. Oh, thank you, Paul, for hanging out and answering questions. Looks like Paul answered Jacoby's question, so that's great. Paul's out there sharing docs. Thanks a lot for the help, Paul. Great. So there's not a lot of questions in there. So this is fun. Again, this was meant to be a little bit of a quick one. The session at GitHub Universe was only about 10 minutes. So we stretched this one out and explored a few more things. But we'd love for you to try this stuff out. Seer is something I think everyone should set up on their first run. The GitHub integration is one of those things you should do on your first run through inside a Sentry. And yeah, so and also the MCP server and code review are good things to set up on day one too. So we'd love to hear from you. Definitely drop me a note on X if you're on there. If you have questions, you want to learn more, or reach out to me. I'm Cody at sentry.io. So yeah, this was a lot of fun.